to talk to you about the female tax. Now, I am a game designer, and when I say I'm a game designer, I generally get two questions. The first is, did I make Minecraft? And man, I wish I did, but I didn't. The second one is, do I spend all day playing games? And yeah, I kind of do. But the good news is, maybe for you, not necessarily for me, is when I'm playing the games, they're not yet fun, and they're kind of broken, and as soon as they get fun, they take them away from me. So the reality is that I'm kind of like an architect, and then I write the rules that might make the house, let's say, the plan that'll build the house. The programmers will actually build it, and the interior designers come in and make it pretty. So in essence, a game designer very much constructs the rules of play. I got started when I was little. I was maybe 4 or 5. My family had very little money, so my mother would let me go to yard sales, and I could buy all the cheap games I wanted, which means that all the parts weren't there. So what I did is I collected a bowl of parts, and I still have a gigantic, it's basically a vat of parts now in our house, and I started making my own games out of them, no idea that I was leading to a career. By the age of 11, I get this fantastic game, and I'm playing D&D, and then I find code, wonderful code. I start coding at the age of about 14, and I become almost instantly addicted. I think code is magical. This is the first game I worked on in the industry. By the time I'm 50 and I actually get in, this is what's called Wizardry, and that's absolutely unbelievably state-of-the-art for the time. And I think we can all agree, like this is a room full of academics and entrepreneurs and artists and creators, and we can all agree that it's very important to get press, to get coverage, to get the word out there about our work. But interestingly enough, I find that when I'm asked questions about my work, about 40% of the time they ask questions about my gender instead. What's it like to be a woman in technology? What's it like to be a woman in games? What's it like to be a woman who digs machines? And now my husband is also a game developer, and interestingly enough, when people ask him about his work, they don't care that he's a man in games, and they just ask him about his work instead. And so I call this the female tax. Basically, I have to do 10 times as much press, it feels like, to get the same attention to my work, which is ridiculous. And it's totally unacceptable to me. And now you could say, Brenda, calm down, which is hard to do. I have a lot of espresso, but so calm down. This is probably just extra attention that you're getting. And while that you could think that that's true, it's not the case. Recently, just in February, I spoke at another conference, and I was there and I did a long interview with somebody after, as did a female colleague of mine. And the interviews that came out, the articles that came out on us, both were about being a woman in games. And that was maybe 1 minute of our entire conversation. And it doesn't just happen in the media. Invariably, I find when I'm asked to speak at conferences, I'm asked to talk about my gender as well. And I'm a game designer, man. I can assure you that my work is way more exciting than being a woman. Well, it depends, right? But it is way more exciting to talk about at conferences. And it's not just women that this happens to either. It happens to anybody who's perceived as an other in their field. And in essence, it is an other tax. Recently, it came to a head at this year's Oscars. And it actually started a hashtag because people would go through the line, tell me about your work, tell me about the things that you're doing. Who are you wearing? I don't care. And the absolute worst offense was this one. So here's Amal Clooney, and she's an international human rights lawyer. This is a woman who's changing the world. And she's arguing a case. She's arguing against an appeal at the European High Court, mind you, against an appeal on the genocide of 1.5 million people. Think about that. And somebody asked her when she came out, who are you wearing? Think about that. What if they had asked her this question instead? What didn't we learn because they asked an idiotic question? And so I think about, not just for her, but for me and for every other creative woman, what is that? What are we losing by not allowing them to talk about the things that are in their head and not the things that decorate their front? Oh, thank you. I got into the industry in 1981. There were 5 women, and I knew all of them. I would go to conferences. I'd go to conferences and be the only woman there. I celebrated the first time there was a line at the women's restroom. And I applaud the diversity that we're putting into our conferences and into our media and into our classrooms and into our hiring. But man, wouldn't it be great to put these people on the stage and let them talk about their work and the things that matter to them, instead of their sexuality or their gender or the color of their skin? It just doesn't make sense. So this is me when I'm 5, before espresso, and there are boys and there are girls, and I have always felt like we were in this together. And by 1999, I first hear a term, female game designer. And when I hear the term female game designer, I don't quite know what to think. It doesn't match very well, and I start getting messages from people, in fact. And this particular one saying they never thought of me as a female game designer, and you know what, neither had I. And it went from being we're all in this together to we're all in this kind of, but you're not like us, and just be aware of that. And I was so fascinated that when I had an opportunity to write an article on it about what it was like to be a woman who digs machines, I instead asked this question of my male colleagues. And these are the answers I got. And you can tell they were a little perplexed because they'd never been asked such questions before. So I doubled down. And so I asked them, now these are questions, I get these questions all the time. So I asked them these questions, and these are the answers I got. And suddenly it felt like my gender was a function of game designer, whatever that code is. And suddenly I was very aware of being female. Now this may shock some of you, but my genitals have never made a game design decision. Absolutely true. Not a single one. I have also never said I want to grow up and make games as a woman. Never said I want to kick ass in games as a woman. In fact, I was really thinking, have I made any gendered decisions? Never said I wanted to breastfeed like a boss. Never. Ever, not once. However, I did breastfeed twins for a year, so I did, just so we're all aware of that. I never said this. Never said I wanted to be amazing at it. In fact, I'm looking forward to it stopping. Never said I wanted to give birth in record time until like the last 5 minutes, and I was really, really ready. And then I started thinking about, does this ever actually work to my advantage? And this is the list of awards from my resume. Here's what it looks like if I take away the gendered ones. This is what my resume looks like today. And that's not to say I'm not grateful. I'm super grateful. It's great to get an award, but I want to compete in a full field. I don't want to win an award as a woman. I want to win it as myself. Thank you. And so I wonder, this topic of radical collaboration, is it so radical to just want to be one of the gang, just to want to belong? And I know it's important. Now, I know we need role models. I met this guy. He was at a conference for a game my husband created. And this guy was really anxious to talk to John. And I thought, oh, you're a big fan of his game? And he said, well, yes, but no. And he said, I'm a big fan of his because he made his games while being Mexican. And because I am Mexican, and yes, he's dressed as a hot dog, that's probably a whole nother talk. But he said, because he made his games while being Mexican, and I was a little Mexican kid, I knew I could do it too. And it reminded me of a time that I was in Europe. I'm at Gordon Ramsay's flagship restaurant, and here's who's holding down his 3 stars. This is Claire Smith. She's the chef there. And I want to say it didn't matter to me that it was a woman, but you know what it did? It actually did. It mattered so much I wanted to go in the kitchen and meet her, and I did. And I know we all need heroes. We all need people to look up to. And I know we need diversity. I think diversity is incredibly important. But I think that you can put us on the stage and ask us to talk about what matters to us, about the work that we do, and not the color of our skin, our gender, who we sleep with. I don't think that matters. And so I'm done paying the female tax. That's it. I'm not going to answer those questions anymore. Thank you. And I encourage you to stop answering the questions as well. If you're a reporter, stop asking me because I'm not going to answer it. And if you want to know what I'm wearing, it's the same thing you're wearing. It's confidence. Thank you.